I was paying the bills, but my dad moved his second family into my room. So I left, and now he's desperate to get me back. This one is wild, so have a minute of silence for his family and hit that subscribe button while we get into this story. Living at home at 24 wasn't ideal, but it made sense. Rent in my city was ridiculous, and I was trying to save up while working full-time and building my side hustle. I wasn't freeloading. I paid for most of the groceries, handled the internet and utility bills, and even helped cover the mortgage. My dad never really said thanks, but I didn't expect him to. That wasn't how he operated. The house was technically still his, but I had turned the basement into my own space. I installed a desk, soundproof panels, and lighting for my content work. It wasn't luxurious, but it worked. And for a while, it felt like home. Then everything changed. It started with a weird phone call. I came home one night after work and heard him on the phone in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but he wasn't exactly whispering. He was laughing, saying things like, "You'll love it here, and don't worry, you won't mind." I had no idea who he was talking to, but I figured maybe it was about a cousin coming to visit or something temporary. I didn't think much of it until that Friday, when I came home to find boxes lined up in the hallway. I thought maybe my dad was moving something into storage. I wasn't prepared for what I found downstairs. My room, my space, the one I paid to maintain and lived in, was full of someone else's stuff. My bed had been stripped, my monitor and computer were pushed into a corner, and a random toddler was sitting on my desk chewing on a USB cord. Standing in the middle of the room, looking right at me like I was the intruder, was a woman I didn't recognize and two other kids. One on the bed, one scribbling on the wall with a permanent marker. I just stood there. I didn't say anything at first because my brain hadn't caught up. Then I turned around and went upstairs to find my dad, and when I did, he didn't even look surprised. He just said, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to talk to you about that." He explained that this was his other family, that he had been seeing a woman named Felicia for over 2 years, but they'd had a rough patch with housing, and she needed a place to stay. So naturally, without asking me, without even warning me, he had moved her and her 3 kids into my room. My room, the one I had built with my own money, my own time, my own plans. I asked him where I was supposed to sleep. He just shrugged and said, "You've got a car, don't you? You're a grown man. You'll figure it out." I don't remember exactly what I said in response, but I remember laughing. Not because it was funny, but because it was so absurd that laughing felt like the only thing I could do. Then I asked him if he was serious. He said it was his house, and he'd do whatever he wanted with it. But I didn't own a damn thing, not even the floor under my feet. That night, I slept in my car. Not because I had nowhere else to go, but because I needed to think. I needed space. I needed to figure out what the hell I was supposed to do next. The next morning, I tried to get some of my things, my backup drive, my headset, a few clothes. Felicia was in the room folding laundry like she had lived there her entire life. When I walked in, she didn't say hello. She just said, "Can you not slam the door next time? The baby's napping." I wasn't in the mood for small talk. I grabbed my gear and left. When I went back upstairs, my dad was sitting on the couch watching TV like none of this was a big deal. I asked him again how long they were staying. He just said, "Until she gets back on her feet. She's family now." That's when it clicked. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a favor. He was building a second life right under our roof and using my contributions to do it. The morning after I retrieved some of my things, I didn't go home. I didn't even call. I drove to work early, parked, and just sat there in the lot with my coffee going cold in the cup holder. I kept replaying the conversation over and over. Him sitting there on the couch, eyes still on the TV, saying she's family now like that meant something. Like that was supposed to erase the fact that I had been paying for the electricity her kids were now using to stream cartoons on my television. The fact that I had been putting food in the fridge that was now stocked with juice boxes and Lunchables. The fact that I had come home after a 10-hour shift to find crayon drawings on my studio wall and an old baby swing where my editing chair used to be. The more I thought about it, the more disgusted I felt. Not just with him, but with myself for giving him the benefit of the doubt. For putting up with his passive-aggressive comments. For swallowing years of emotional distance and justifying it as his way of showing love. For thinking that paying the bills made me immune to this level of disrespect. He had decided that my labor, my income, my role in that house meant nothing. That at the end of the day, I was just a placeholder until something more convenient came along. And now that I was disposable. I didn't respond to his text that week. Not the one that said, "Pick up more bread if you go into the store," or the one that said, "Don't forget to transfer your half of the water bill." I paid it anyway, but I didn't reply. I wasn't ready to burn it all down. Not yet. I needed a plan. I wasn't going to let emotion take the wheel. I wasn't going to yell or post about it online or show up to make a scene. I wanted my exit to be clean, quiet, undeniable. So I started packing, not all at once, just a little at a time. First the essentials, my work gear, my camera, my backups, my passport. Then the clothes I actually wore, the sentimental stuff, things I couldn't replace. I packed it into boxes and took it with me every day, unloading it into a storage unit I'd rented across town. No one noticed. Felicia was too busy playing house, and my dad was too checked out to see what was right in front of him. Every evening I'd come back to that house with one less box, and no one said a word. I also stopped contributing. Quietly. The last grocery run I paid for was the last one I ever did. The final utility payment was the last dime they ever got from me. The only thing I left on auto pay was the internet because I still needed to use it until I was out completely. I didn't announce it. I didn't make a show. I just stopped giving, and no one noticed. Meanwhile, Felicia's kids had fully taken over the place. The middle one had started using my laptop when I wasn't home. I could tell because some of my desktop folders had been moved, and someone had installed a mobile game launcher. I asked him once calmly if he touched my stuff. He said, "My mom said it's ours now." When I brought it up to my dad, he just waved it off. Said they're kids. Said I was being dramatic. I told him he was lucky I didn't password lock the entire system. He told me if I didn't want them touching anything, I should move out. I didn't reply, but I remember nodding slowly, thinking, soon. Around that time, I found a roommate situation through a coworker. Cheap, decent space, shared utilities, and best of all, no family drama. I didn't even hesitate. I signed the lease, paid the deposit, and spent the next 3 days moving everything out of storage and into my new place. I only needed one more trip to the house to collect the last few things I hadn't been able to move yet, mostly some small furniture and a few tools in the garage. I went on a Tuesday afternoon when I knew no one would be there. I was careful. I was fast. But I wasn't careful enough. Felicia came home earlier than expected. She saw me loading a table into the back of my car and walked up to me like she had the right. She asked if I was stealing from the house. I told her calmly that it was my table, that I paid for it, that I built it. She said that my dad had told her everything in the basement was communal now. I didn't argue. I just walked back inside, grabbed the last 2 boxes, and walked right past her. As I was leaving, she said, "You're being really ungrateful. He let you live here rent-free for years." That was the last thing she said to me. I didn't stop walking. I didn't answer. I didn't look back. When I got in my car, I closed the trunk, got in, and drove away. I didn't say goodbye to my dad. I didn't leave a note. I just disappeared. 2 days later, the internet auto pay failed. That's when they noticed. The first sign of trouble came through a missed call from my dad. I let it ring out. He didn't leave a voicemail, which wasn't surprising. He never liked talking when he wasn't in control of the situation. But then another call came an hour later. Then a text that simply read, "Call me." I didn't. I didn't need to. I already knew what it was about. A day earlier, the internet bill had bounced. The card I'd been using for the autopay had been removed, and the service cut off within hours. I knew the house would go into full panic mode the moment the Wi-Fi dropped. Felicia's kids were glued to screens morning to night. My dad watched sports and YouTube like they were breathing exercises. Even Felicia herself worked remotely 2 days a week and had bragged once about how she'd never go back to the office. Without internet, that whole ecosystem came to a standstill. I sat on my couch in my new apartment watching the calls pile up while I ate dinner in peace. Not because I wanted to rub it in, but because for the first time in months, maybe years, everything around me was quiet. No doors slamming. No kids screaming. No weird tension every time I walked into the kitchen. The silence and the subtle hum of a place that was actually mine. I hadn't realized how much stress I'd been carrying until it was gone. I didn't feel guilty about the internet. I had paid for it without thanks for over a year, and the moment I left, they expected it to keep running as if I was still there, still useful, still willing to support the weight of a family that treated me like furniture. By the end of that week, the tone of the messages changed. My dad texted again, this time with, "We need to talk." "House stuff?" I still didn't reply. I figured if it was urgent, he'd explain. He didn't. I got a message from Felicia next, which surprised me more than anything else. It said, "Hey, can we talk? I think there's been a misunderstanding." I didn't mean to come off harsh the other day. It wasn't an apology, not really, just a strategic pivot. She knew the internet outage wasn't a fluke. She knew something had shifted. What she didn't know was that this wasn't the beginning of my leaving. It was the end. Everything she and my father had built in my absence had been standing on a floor I had quietly pulled out from beneath them. A few days later, I started hearing things from mutual acquaintances, distant family, cousins, neighbors. The word was spreading. Not that I'd moved out, that much was obvious by now, but that things at the house were falling apart. Felicia's oldest had been suspended from school after fighting a kid in the hallway. Her middle child had destroyed the hallway thermostat after being grounded for taking my dad's phone. The youngest had flushed an entire tube of toothpaste and a pair of toy cars down the toilet and flooded the bathroom. None of this was surprising. But now that I wasn't there to pick up the pieces or pay for the repairs, my dad was actually feeling it. He called again the following weekend. This time, he left a voicemail. His voice was flatter, more controlled, but I could hear the cracks underneath. He said we should have a conversation, that things at home were getting a little out of hand, that he missed having me around, that I was always solid. It was strange hearing that word from him. He'd never called me reliable or dependable before. Usually I was just doing what you're supposed to do or being a man about things. But now that I was gone, apparently I was solid. A foundation, he said. Something the house had lost since I left. I didn't call him back. Instead, I sat down and started reviewing all the bills from the last 12 months, what I'd paid, what had come out of my account, what receipts I'd saved. I wasn't planning on suing him or asking for reimbursement. That wasn't the point. I just wanted the record, something that proved that for more than a year I had carried more than my weight while being treated like a tenant without rights, while being replaced in my own home, while being told I'd figured out because I had a car and no kids. I printed everything, organized it, and filed it in a folder marked Dad, final year. I didn't plan on using it. I just wanted it to exist. About a week later, I ran into someone from the old neighborhood, a friend of my dad's who used to come over during football season. He hadn't seen me in a while and asked where I'd been. I said I'd move. He laughed and said, "Good for you, man. Things over there are nuts. You dodged a bullet." When I asked what he meant, he told me that Felicia and her kids had taken over the living room entirely, that her sister was staying there now, too, that she was trying to run some kind of business out of the dining room, something involving hair and nails, and that there were strangers in and out of the house all week. I didn't respond. I just smiled. It made sense. The house was collapsing because my dad had never built it on anything solid. He thought family meant control, that as long as you paid the mortgage, people owed you silence and loyalty. He never understood that what made that house stable wasn't ownership, it was me. My presence, my effort, my quiet willingness to carry more than I should have had to. And when I walked away, all the cracks he'd been ignoring opened wide enough to swallow him whole. Months passed, and I heard less and less about the house. At first, people still brought it up, cousins, old neighbors, mutual contacts who thought I might care to know how things were going. I listened out of politeness, nodded through the updates, but I didn't ask for them. I had already buried that part of my life, not out of anger, not because I wanted to forget, but because some things don't deserve to take up space anymore. The place where I once lived had become just another house on just another street, occupied by people I no longer recognized, run by a man who had traded loyalty for control and ended up with neither. Felicia and her kids were still living there, but things had deteriorated. The oldest had dropped out of school. The middle one was getting into trouble constantly, fights, vandalism, police visits. The youngest, the one who used to scream through the walls into my room, had bitten a teacher and was suspended from preschool. The woman had gone from acting like the queen of the house to begging people on Facebook for money for groceries. I never responded. I never commented. I just watched quietly from a distance, not with spite, but with clarity. I wasn't witnessing karma. I was witnessing the natural result of poor choices compounding until they collapsed. Then my dad started trying to reach out again, this time through family. My aunt called me one day and said he wanted to talk. She didn't know the details. She just said he seemed off, like something was finally sinking in. I told her I was doing fine and changed the subject. A week later, another cousin messaged me. "Hey, I know things were rough, but I think your dad's in over his head. Might be worth just hearing him out." I didn't reply, not because I was being petty, but because I didn't see the point. He'd made his choices. I had made mine. The day I knew things had hit rock bottom was the day I got a letter. Not an email, not a text. A letter, handwritten, folded, mailed. No return address on the envelope, just my name and my new apartment address, which meant he had gone out of his way to find it. Inside was a short message. No greeting, no apology, just a series of statements. House is falling apart. Kids are out of control. She doesn't listen. Internet's gone again. Can't get anyone to fix the water heater. Thought you'd come back by now. Just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have let them take your room. I should have handled things better. You were doing more than I ever admitted. It ended with a line that I know took everything in him to write. I miss you. I folded the letter and placed it in the same folder where I had kept the receipts and bills. I didn't cry. I didn't get angry. I didn't feel much of anything, because by the time someone realizes they've lost something they took for granted, it's already too late to get it back. I never replied. There was nothing left to say. It wasn't about forgiveness. It wasn't about pride. It was about boundaries, about making sure that the next version of my life wasn't shaped by people who only saw my value when it was gone. The lesson had been learned, and it wasn't mine. The next holiday season came and went, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel the usual guilt. I made my own plans, spent time with people who actually wanted me around, ate food I liked, stayed up late in my own living room without worrying about who needed the TV next or whether someone's kid had spilled milk on my keyboard. The silence of my apartment wasn't empty. It was earned. It was peace. My dad tried one more time a few weeks later. He called from a different number. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded tired, older, like the past year had drained something out of him that he couldn't get back. He said he didn't expect me to call back. Just wanted to check in. Said he hoped I was doing well, that I seemed happy from the outside. Then he hung up. No rambling. No excuses. Just that. He was right. I was happy. Not in a flashy way. Not in the way you see on social media. Just in the quiet way that happens when no one's stealing your peace, your space, your time, your trust. I moved again a few months later. New job, new city. Smaller place, better view. I brought very little with me, just what mattered. Left the rest behind. I never told him I was leaving. Didn't leave a new address. Didn't forward my mail, because some people only understand absence. And by then, mine had already spoken louder than anything I could have said.